Hi, algebra students. Welcome to lesson 4.2, Solving Quadratic Equations by Factorization. Please open your books to page 93. This is where you will find the try-its once we begin. But first, our notes. Consider the form that we worked with last lesson, ax squared plus bx plus c. We now are adding an equals 0 because after we factorize these expressions, we are then going to proceed and go ahead and solve it by adding the equal 0. Now I underlined A, B, and C. Here are the notes. Remember, pause, get this all down. Take your time. There's a lot in this lesson. Just warning you. Okay, number 1. A, B, and C are constants, and A is not equal to 0. So constants means it will be a real number, and sometimes, like in the case if it's just x, that means the constant is automatically 1. Number 2, therefore, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 is a quadratic equation in one variable x. So we just have one variable to solve for. Number 3, several methods are able to be used to solve quadratic equations. In this lesson, we are going to use the factorization method. Number 4, the property to be aware of is for any two real numbers, p and q, if p times q equals 0, then either p is going to equal 0, or q is going to equal 0, or p being equal to q will equal 0. Now that doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we start working with this new thing. Okay, continuing. The basic steps are we're going to use the cross method of factorization, and then we're going to work on to solve. Okay, having said all of that, once you have these notes down, we'll proceed with try-it number 4 at the bottom of 93. And here we go. The problem is to solve 15x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals 0. So first, we're going to do the cross factorization of 15x squared plus 2x minus 1. We set it up as we learned 15x squared, the minus 1, and the 2x. Now I have a little asterisk there. To get to 2x, positive 2x, while having a negative 1 in this position, it's going to I'm going to need a positive and a negative somewhere. So I'm going to need 5 minus 3. I say 5 minus 3 because I got a 5 here. Let's start over here. We have 5x times 3x gives us the 15x. So working with the 5 and the 3 to get to 2x, I'm going to have to subtract 3x. Negative 1 can only be achieved by a positive and a negative, so a positive 1 and a negative 1. So therefore, I have to decide where the positive goes and where the negative goes. Since 5x has to be positive, and I have to do my crosses here, the positive 1 is here, the negative 1 is up there. So that's how I think through this cross factorization, and I end up with 5x minus 1 times 3x plus 1. And now I go ahead and solve it. Now remember, this is going to equal 0. Therefore, I take and rewrite my factorization as an expression equaling 0. Now it becomes an equation because I have an equal sign in there. Therefore, I take each part, the p and the q. So 5x minus 1 is going to equal 0, or 3x plus 1 is going to equal 0. And then I just work it. So 5x minus 1 equals 0. I just even out the sides. It's 5x equals 1. X is 1/5. The other one, 3x plus 1 is 0. 3x equals -1. Therefore, x equals -1/3. Remember how to work out the sides. Bringing this over, I add 1, divide through by 5. Here, I subtract 1, divide through by 3 to get x by itself. Now, therefore, my answer is one or the other. So x is going to equal 1/5 or a -1/3. And that is how we answer the solution to solving for a quadratic equation where we have one variable, x. That is one of the simplest situations we can find ourselves in. So again, go over this, study it, make sure you understand it, pause, rewind. When you work these things, you need all of these steps. Working things off to the side as you try things out. Once you get to this point, it's simply a matter of math. You do your A side and your B side, and it's an either or. Now let's say you flip these, that's okay. Doesn't matter if you do the, if you ended up with 3x plus 1 times 5x minus 1, doesn't matter because we have that associative property of multiplication, so it can be flipped. However, you need one or the other. The connecting conjunction here is or. Going on. Try it number 5. Each try it will get progressively a little more tricky, requiring a few more steps. Once again, I cannot stress this enough. Do not skip steps. There's just too many things to remember here. So we are given the situation of solving 3x times 3x plus 14 equals -49. So this particular expression needs to be worked to the form that we were given at the beginning of the lesson, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I need to get this over there, but first I need to distribute 3x to the 3x and the positive 14. So the positive 3x and the positive 14. So I do just that. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times positive 14 is a positive 42x. And now I'm going to bring that -49 over because I need this side to equal 0. So bringing that over, I add 49 to each side. So I'm ending up with 9x squared plus 42x plus 49 equals 0. Now I'm to the point of using the cross method of factorization. So again, I'm working with this. I don't really need the equals 0 part right now. I just kind of threw that in there so I know what I'm doing. And I first put 9x squared and 49 and 42x. Great that they are all positive. 9x squared can only be 3x times 3x. 49 can be 7 times 7, and that actually kind of works out. It can be 1 times 49 or 7 times 7. Going on from there, I need to get to 42. It just happens to be 21 plus 21. Well, 3 times 7 is 21, so I don't even have to put in my little arrows because it all works. 3x times 7 is 21x. 3x times 7 is 21x. You add them together, it's 42x. Multiply them 49, and we got it. So we have a situation of exactly the same thing times exactly the same thing, which is 3x plus 7 squared. Because it's exactly the same thing, I only need to solve this once. Because if I solve it both ways, it's going to be the same thing no matter which way I solve it. So in this case, if it ends up being exactly the same thing, you just have to solve it once. So 3x plus 7 equals 0. take my 7 over. 3x is negative 7. Divide through by 3. X equals negative 7/3. My book also included the mixed number, but truthfully in algebra, just leave it in this form, negative 7/3. Interesting that they wrote it as a mixed number, but if you would write it as a mixed number, even though we typically leave it as an improper fraction, I would never mark it wrong. The important thing is it's of course negative. Don't mess up on that one. Okay, continuing. Try it number 6. Again, remember, get all these steps down. Pause, rewind. Think it through. Ask questions if you do not get it. Okay, here we go. This is a little more complicated. We are supposed to solve 3x times 5 minus x equals 2 times 7 minus 4x. I am first going to distribute the 3x to the 5 minus x, and then the 2 to the 7 minus 4x. So 3x times 5 is 15x. 3x times negative x is negative 3x squared. Equals 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times negative 4x is negative 8x. Now I'm bringing everything over. So I'm going to first of all bring the x's over. So negative 8x is plus 8x, gives me 15x plus 8x is 23x. There's no x squareds to bring over, so that stays the same. Equals 14. Now I got to bring that 14 over by subtracting. And I'm left with 23x minus 3x squared minus 14 equals 0. That's how I get the 0. However, x squared has to come first. So I have negative 3x squared to begin with plus 23x minus 14 equals 0. Can't have a negative in that position. Just can't have it. So I basically am flipping the signs because I'm multiplying this whole quantity by a negative 1. So I can flip the signs. Therefore, instead of negative 3x squared, it becomes positive 3x squared. Instead of positive 23x, it's negative 23x. Instead of negative 14, it's positive 14. I need this to be positive in order to do the cross factorization. You cannot do this with the negative. It just never works out right, at least in a simple way. So the next one, I'm going to do the cross factorization of 3x squared minus 23x plus 14. Get everything in position. My thought pattern here off to the side before I actually added anything. Negative 23x means I need negative factors because I add them. I need negative factors, or at least the negative has to be higher than the positive. And I need negative factors for a positive 14 because two positives make a negative. So I have all that going through my mind. So my factors for 14 are 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. However, they both have to be negative. So working it out in my head, I think, well, to get to 23, I need a negative 21 plus a negative 2. That makes a negative 23. A negative 14 plus a negative 1 only gets me to negative 15. So I have to do this somehow. I need a negative 21 and a negative 2. So going back here, I start with my 3x squared. I get that by 3x times x. The way I can get to a negative 21 is by putting my negative 7 in this position. I got my negative 21x. That means the negative 2 goes up here. Now I have negative 2 times negative 7 is 14. Gives me a negative 2x. I add these two negative numbers. It equals negative 23x. All works out. Therefore, 3x minus 2 times x minus 7 is my solution to the factorization. Now I go on to solve it in step number 3. Split those things apart. 3x minus 2 is 0. Take my 2 over. 3x is 2. Divide through by 3. x is 2/3. Here, x minus 7 is 0. Bring the 7 over. X is 7. Nothing left to divide because I'm left with x. I'm done. X is 7. So my answer is 2/3 or 7. Okay. We added a few more layers in this one. Notice it takes a whole page. Don't skimp on paper. Remember, we live in a paper town. Okay, going on, try it, number 7. Continue when you are ready. Now, we have x minus 4 times 2x plus 7 equals x minus 4 times x plus 3. Notice, I have a repeat here. I'm going to expand both sides. So that means I'm going to take x times 2x plus 7 and negative 4 times 2x plus 7. Here I'm going to take x times x plus 3 and negative 4 times x plus 3. Okay, doing that. That leaves me here 2x squared plus 7x minus 8x minus 28, working with positives and negatives, equals x squared plus 3x negative 4x negative 12. Now I'm going to combine like terms on each side. I'm just going to combine my x's in the middle. So I have 2x squared, positive 7x minus 8x leaves me with a negative x, minus 28. Doing it here, I have 8x minus x again, negative 12. This is going to leave me in a predicament because when I bring it all over, so I take my x squared, okay, I end up with no x's. See what happened here? So I take my x squared over by subtracting, leaves me with x squared. I take, that's x squared minus x is minus 28. Then I take my minus x by adding it, cancels out my x's. Then of course I take this over by adding, but that's neither here nor there because I need an x. We can't factor this form, this quadratic equation, without the x. We can't do it because remember, all of those constants cannot equal 0. And if it's not there, it equals 0. Well, crumbs. So this happens. If that would happen, you got to start over. So here we go. So remember what I said up here? This time I am putting a huge bracket around each side. And I'm just going to bring this thing over, and it's going to equal 0. Okay? As I'm combining things. So now I have, after I brought this over, so I minused it from this side to bring it over. So I have this huge quantity minus this same quantity, but I have the same thing here. Same thing. So I can do this. I'm going to do the distribution in reverse. So x minus 4 times 2x plus 7 minus the x plus 3. Okay. Moving on to the next step, I'm going to take that minus 1 and multiply it through. I'm left with 2x plus 7 minus x minus 3, because x is positive, so they both become negative. Now, I'm going to combine things here. 2x minus x is x. Positive 7 minus 3 is 4. I end up with x minus 4 times x plus 4 equals 0. Well, doing that, I got to getting rid of the minus 4, I added, x is 4. Here, getting rid of the positive 4, x is minus 4. So my answer to this question, or to this equation rather, is 4 or negative 4. This is in here to show you that sometimes if it doesn't work out, you got to rethink it. The easiest way to rethink it is if you have this setup, you might want to include them each in brackets and bring the whole thing over to equal 0, and then use what you know about reversing the distributive property and make it work for you. Okay, because that's exactly allowed. It's all the principles, all the properties. You got to really keep your wits about you. So we have now looked at 4 different scenarios. And of course, we left the humdinger for the last. Okay, lots of thinking. Okay, there you go. That's what it's going to look like, but we will actually have to squish that down a little bit. All right, so now we add squares into the equation. The try it for this particular problem is at the top of 96. You gotta flip your page. So we have 4 times 3x plus 1 squared equals x minus 7 squared. So my choice is to expand both sides, which gets a little muddy. But so what we're gonna do is recall a bunch of things before I even show you what's going on. So recall this form. A squared minus b squared is the same as a plus b times a minus b. Also, recall in the situation of x minus 7 squared, to get there, since it's a square, like we just did before with the negative 4, positive 4, working in reverse, it's going to be x minus 7 times x plus 7. So you got all that in mind. So knowing this, what I did, instead of expanding before I get it over, because I learned my lesson last time, I'm just going to take this quantity, bring it to the other side, and I have a minus x minus 7 squared. So now I have my a and my b. Now what happened to that a? Well, I have to get this whole shebang as something to the second power. Right now, 4 times 3x plus 1, the 3x plus 1 is the only thing to the second power. However, if I take the square root of 4, which is 2, and then have 2 times 3x plus 1, use that as one singular quantity instead of 2 separate ones, and square the whole thing, I have basically the same thing, because I would square the 2, and this would just be left in this form squared. So I had to redo this to get my a for the a squared minus b squared, and then I have the b squared is already in the way it needed to go. Now here comes the thinking. We not only have, let me just cover this up before we get ahead of ourselves here. We not only have this form, which we did here, but we are also working with this, which we already remarked that is the same as x minus 7 times x plus 7. So you have double workings going on. So you have this, a plus b times a minus b. So you have this part plus this part. Notice For this part that has the positive a plus b, I need to use the negative version of the second part, positive, negative, because I subtracted. And then just the opposite. For this part, the a minus b, I need to use the x plus 7 right there. Okay. Knowing all that, I can do this. I take my a, 2 times 3x plus 1, plus my b. So in this case, my b is plus x minus 7. And now I'm going to take my a, again, 2 times 3x plus 1, and minus my b, which in this case is x plus 7. A plus b times a minus b. So I have my a plus b times my a minus b. And I just put my a in the position, and then because I have to use my opposites for the b, which I factored out that way, now I'm set up. That is a lot of thinking. That is a lot of thinking. You got to really keep your wits about you. From this point on, it's pretty simple. So first, I'm going to distribute the 2 to my a problem. So that would be 6x plus 2. Same in both sides, 6x plus 2, plus 7 minus 7, minus x plus 7 on this side. Now I simply combine like terms, so 6x plus x is 7x, positive 2, negative 7 is negative 5. That's my first quantity, times 6x minus x, 5x, positive 2, positive 7, positive 9 equals 0. Okay, from here on in, it's pretty easy. I solve for 0, 7x minus 5. Bring my 5 over. 7x is positive 5. Divide through by 7. X is 5/7. Over here, get my 9 over. 5x equals negative 9. Divide through by 5. X is negative 5/9. So there we have it. From here on out, it's okay. Getting there was a little bit of lots of pattern thinking, lots of remembering, lots of recalling. Go back, write down those patterns from last chapter. You need them yet this chapter. Remember the cross multiplication when you need it. This we could not use the cross multiplication at all. We had to rely on patterns because of those squared quantities. So keep your wits about you. Keep your wits about you. Your assignment will be page 96, number 1 and 2. You will be using paper. You will need to prove all these steps. I need to see your thinking. It needs to be put down logically, that can be followed in a logical order, not all over the place, like, oh, from here to here to here to here. No, don't think like that. Think boom, 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 boom. Okay, again, page 96, numbers 1 and 2. It's a long lesson. Get it all down, think it all through. Do good math.